Hi everyone, my name is Knyazev. For the last 8 years I have been working with automation, and for more than 3 years I have been using AI tools almost every day. I bought a ChatGPT subscription just a few months after it launched, and since then these tools have become part of my normal work. Today I want to explain in simple language what AI agents actually are, not through 50 tools, not through scary words like MCP, hooks, terminals, CI/CD, or enterprise security policies, and definitely not from the position of if you are not a programmer, this is not for you yet. The goal is the opposite. After this webinar, I want you to have a calm, clear mental model. What is happening with AI right now? Why is everyone talking about agents? How is an agent different from a normal chatbot? And how can you start using this without feeling like you are already 5 years late? The main idea of the whole webinar is simple. An agent is not magic, and it is not just a smarter chat. An agent is a model placed inside a working environment. That environment gives it instructions, context, access to specific files, tools, rules, limits, and the ability to do several steps in a row. A normal chat mostly gives you text. An agent is closer to a digital employee. It can receive a task, read materials, make a plan, edit something, check the result, and show you the final output. If you understand this mechanism, tools like Claude Code, Codex, Cowork, Gemini CLI, Klein, and others stop looking like chaos. You begin to see one common idea. We are moving from AI, give me advice, to AI, do the task. Before we go into tools, let's set the frame. Today is not about learning every term in the agent world. We are not going to cover GitHub workflows, MCP servers, hooks, sub-agents, CI/CD, corporate safety policies, and all the advanced infrastructure around agents. Those things matter, but if you start there, it becomes overwhelming very quickly. So today we will move from the foundation. First, what an agent is, then why it can remember things, then how tools like Claude Code, Codex, and Cowork fit into the same picture, then how to start with one folder, a few files, and simple rules. And finally, how normal work tasks, documents, reports, content, learning, project planning can already be delegated to agents. This webinar is not about memorizing 100 terms. It is about building the right picture in your head. For a long time, most people used AI as a conversational tool. Write this text, explain this term, give me ideas, check this email. Then people started using AI more like an assistant. Here is a document, help me understand it. Here is a spreadsheet, find the mistakes. Here are my notes, turn them into structure. And now we are entering the next step. Not just explain how to make a report, but here is a folder with materials, make the report. Not just tell me how to fix the bug, but find the bug, fix it, and verify that it works. Not just give me a webinar plan, but read my notes, create the structure, write the script, save it, and help me prepare the slides. That is the shift from chat to agent. And the important thing is, you are not late. Chatbots are already used by a huge number of people, but agents are still early. Most people have not built the habit of delegating real work to AI systems yet. So if you are listening to this now, you are not behind. You are early enough to build the right mental model before this becomes normal. There is one important nuance here. I do not want to say that a chatbot is not an agent at all. Technically, a chatbot can be seen as a very simple form of an agent. It has a system prompt. It has a conversation history. Sometimes it has memory. Sometimes it has tools. So the difference is not chat is one world, agent is another world. The difference is the level of agency. A chat mostly tells you how to do something. It can explain, suggest a plan, write a draft, or give advice. An agent is closer to execution. It can have a working environment, a folder, files, instructions, tools, permissions, and a result format. And then it can do steps, read the files, analyze the materials, create an outline, edit a document, check the output, save the result. So the more context, tools, and action loop the system has, the more it behaves like a real working agent. In short, chat explains the path. Agent walks the path. The simplest formula is agent equals model plus harness. The model is the intelligence. It is the part that understands language, reasons, writes, summarizes, plans, and generates. The harness is everything around the model that turns answers into actions. It gives the model context. It gives it tools. It controls what files it can access. It stores the state of the task. It decides when to call a tool, when to read a file, when to ask you a question, and when the task is done. This is why the same model can feel very different in different products. In a simple chat, it mostly answers. Inside a coding agent, it can read files, edit code, run tests, and commit changes. Inside an office work agent, it can work with documents, PDFs, spreadsheets, and presentations. The intelligence is important, but the environment is what makes it useful. A model by itself is like a brain without a workplace. It can think, it can write, it can reason. But if it has no files, no tools, no context, no rules, and no ability to act, then it is not really doing work in your environment. That is why people often get disappointed by AI. They ask a vague question in an empty chat and expect a perfect result. But the model has no real context. It does not know your project, your files, your constraints, your tone, your previous decisions, or what done means for you. Agents become useful when you stop treating AI like a magic text box and start giving it a workplace. When people say the model remembers something, it is useful to understand what usually happens technically. Most of the time, memory is not mystical. Memory is properly assembled context. Before the model answers, the system sends it a package of information. System instructions, developer instructions, project rules, previous messages, your current request, maybe files, maybe tool results, maybe saved preferences. The model does not remember like a human. It receives a context window, and the quality of that context window often defines the quality of the answer. So when we work with agents, we are not only writing prompts, we are designing context. Here is a simple example. Imagine I ask an AI assistant, remind me what Nikita does. If the model only sees that one sentence, it has to guess. But if the harness sends context with it, for example, previous messages, project notes, a profile, or instructions, the model can answer much better. This is why the same model can look smart in one environment and useless in another. The difference is often not the model. The difference is what the model receives before it speaks. What you see on the screen is usually simple. You write a message, the AI answers. But behind the scenes, a lot can happen. The harness can read files, it can search, it can call tools, it can pass hidden instructions, it can decide which model to use, it can store the result, it can ask the model to revise its own plan. That is why AI agent is not just a model name. It is the full system around the model. And once you see that, the agent world becomes much easier to understand. The most important part of an agent is the action loop. An agent does not just answer once. It can analyze the task, choose the next action, use a tool, observe the result, update the plan, and continue. This loop is what makes it feel more like an employee than a chatbot. For example, if you ask it to prepare a report, it might first read the files, then extract key points, then create a structure, then write a draft, then check if something is missing, then save the final file. This is not magic, it is just a loop. Think, act, observe, adjust, continue. So again, a chatbot can be seen as the beginning of this spectrum. Chat, then chat with memory, then chat with files, then chat with tools, then a system that can act across several steps, then a system that can work more autonomously inside a defined environment. The border is not always sharp, but the direction is clear. More context, more tools, more permissions, more ability to complete work. That is what people usually mean today when they talk about AI agents. Bad context is when you throw a task into the void, make it better, analyze this. Help me with the document. The model has to guess what you mean. Good context is different. You give the materials, you explain the goal, you define the audience, you describe the format of the result, you add constraints, you say what the agent should not do, and you define what done means. This is one of the biggest skills in working with agents. Not just writing prompts, but preparing the environment where the agent can succeed. Bad context creates a bad agent. Good context creates a predictable result. Right now, I would split the agent world into three big directions. First, coding agents. These are tools like Claude Code, Codex, Klein, Gemini CLI, Cursor, and similar systems. They work with code bases, files, tests, terminal commands, and development workflows. Second, knowledge work agents. These are tools for documents, PDFs, spreadsheets, presentations, research, email, and normal office work. Third, custom agents. These are agents built for a specific workflow: support, analytics, content production, operations, lead qualification, internal tools, or personal automation. The tools are different, but the idea is the same: a model in context with tools inside a working environment, moving toward a result. Claude Code is one example of a coding agent. And an important correction: it is not only a terminal tool. Yes, it has a developer-oriented history and can work with code bases, commands, tests, and repositories. But the key point is not the terminal. The key point is that it gives Claude a working environment where it can read files, edit files, plan changes, run checks, and keep moving through a task. That makes it useful not only for pure programming, but also for many structured file-based tasks. Personally, I am comfortable using Claude Code because it gives me a lot of control. I can see what it is doing, I can redirect it, I can choose models, I can control the level of reasoning, and I can work in a project folder with clear rules. Codex is the same general idea from the OpenAI side. You give it a project, it reads context, makes a plan, edits files, checks results, and explains what it changed. The important thing is that these tools are not just smarter chat, they can work in a real project. They can create files, they can modify existing files, they can run commands, they can verify that the work was done. For beginners, the practical takeaway is simple. If the task has files, rules, and a desired result, it can often become an agent task. Agents are not only for code. Code became one of the first powerful environments for agents because code is convenient. There are files, there are rules, there are tests, and the result can often be checked. But normal work also looks like a project. Documents, spreadsheets, PDFs, emails, notes, requirements, deadlines, a result format. This is where tools like Cowork appear. Cowork is basically an attempt to make this agent experience easier for office work and knowledge work. Not because it can do something fundamentally magical that Claude Code or Codex could never do. In many cases, you can do the same thing in Claude Code or Codex if you're comfortable setting up the environment. The difference is packaging. Cowork gives office users a friendlier starting point, more built-in skills, more pre-configured connectors, and less setup before the first useful result. In that sense, it is like a harness on top of a harness. It takes the same agentic idea and wraps it in a form that feels less like code and more like normal work. And this matters because many people hear the word code and immediately think, this is not for me. I am not a programmer. Cowork is an attempt to remove that fear and say, no, this is also for people who work with documents, reports, files, presentations, and email. The core idea is still the same. An agent does not need to write code. An agent needs a task, an environment, and a result. This is why I do not think you should choose tools like a religion. The wrong question is, which tool is the one true tool? Claude Code or Codex? ChatGPT or Claude? Cursor or Klein? Cowork or something else? The better question is, what task am I trying to solve, and what environment does that task need? If the task is about a code project, tests, and files, you probably want a coding agent. If the task is about documents, spreadsheets, presentations, and the word code scares the user, then a knowledge work agent may be easier to start with. If the task is small, maybe a normal chatbot is enough. If the task repeats every week or every month, maybe you should turn it into a workflow. Tools are different paths to the same direction. Delegate real work to AI in a controlled environment. If you want to start using agents, the first practical step is very simple. Create a project folder. One project, one folder. If you are preparing a webinar, create a webinar folder. If you are preparing a report, create a report folder. If you are working with a client, create a client folder. If you are building a small website, create a website folder. Why does this matter? Because the agent needs context. Do not force it to guess where things are, what files matter, what can be changed, and what should not be touched. A folder turns a conversation into a workspace. You can put notes there, source materials, examples, requirements, drafts, and final results. The folder becomes the agent's desk. A folder is not enough. The agent also needs rules of the game. For Codex, an important file is usually agents.md. For Claude Code, it is often claude.md. Think of this file as onboarding for your digital employee. You write, who are we? What are we doing? What style do we use? What should never be done? What does done mean? The point is that you do not want to repeat the same context every time. If the rules live in the project, the agent can read them again and again. And here is a practical note. You do not have to write this file perfectly by hand. You can ask the agent, ask me the questions you need in order to create a good instruction file for this project. Then you answer, and the agent creates the first version. That is already a much better starting point than an empty chat. A simple instruction file can be very small. For example, who we are. We are preparing a beginner-friendly webinar about AI agents. What we do. We explain the topic clearly and without hype. Style. Calm, practical, direct, no unnecessary jargon. What not to do. Do not delete files. Do not change the project structure without confirmation. Do not invent facts. Done means there is a clear result saved in a separate file. This already helps a lot. The quality improves not because the model suddenly became smarter. The quality improves because the environment became clearer. If you use several agent tools, you do not necessarily want to maintain completely different rules for each one. The practical idea is keep one main instruction source for the project and make the other tools follow it. For example, agents.md can contain the main project rules. Then Claude.md can repeat the key rules, import them, or point to the same source. For beginners, you do not need to start with technical tricks like symlinks. You can simply ask the agent, make sure the Claude Code instructions and the Codex instructions stay consistent in this project. The deeper principle is, good rules should live in the project, not only in your head. Now let's talk about something people often confuse: model, effort, and access. The model is who thinks. Effort is how deeply it thinks before answering. Low or medium effort is usually enough for simple tasks. Rewrite an email, make a list, prepare a draft, summarize something. High effort makes sense when the task is complex. Understand logic, find a bug, change many files, plan architecture, or make a decision where mistakes are expensive. But effort is not the same as access. High effort does not mean the agent can suddenly delete everything on your computer. Effort is about reasoning depth. Access is a separate setting of the environment. If the agent does not have access to your files, it cannot touch them. If you give it access only to one project folder, it works with that folder. So do not be afraid that the moment you open an agent, it will immediately delete files on your computer. That is not how this works. The real rule is, give the agent only the workspace it needs, start in a sandbox folder, and write clear instructions about what it can and cannot change. Now let's look at where this is useful for people who are not developers. An agent does not need code. It needs a task, materials, rules, and a clear result. An office worker can use an agent to process documents. Here is a folder of contracts, extract dates, amounts, counterparties, risks, and save everything as a spreadsheet. Or customer reviews. Group the complaints by topic, find repeated problems, and suggest the first improvements. Or meeting notes. Create a summary, decisions, risks, and next steps. Or a presentation draft. Check the structure, remove weak parts, and suggest a stronger narrative. If there are materials, rules, and a desired result, it is a candidate for agent work. Let's take a simple example. 100 customer reviews. The old way is to open a spreadsheet and manually try to understand what repeats. A chatbot can already help. Here are the reviews. Analyze them. That is useful. But the agent version is stronger. You give the agent access to the files and say, read all reviews, group complaints by theme, highlight the top 5 problems, find example quotes, prepare a short report, save the result as a separate file. If something is missing, ask questions first. Now it is no longer just a chat answer. It is a multi-step task with a clear output, and this is much closer to real work. A good agent task is not make it beautiful. Figure it out. Help me with the documents. A better task sounds like this. Read the files in this folder. Prepare a one-page report for the manager. Highlight 5 key conclusions, risks, and next steps. Save the result as report.md. Do not delete anything. If the data is not enough, ask questions before continuing. This turns the agent from a talker into an executor. There is a task, there are materials, there is a result format, there are constraints, there is a done criterion, and there is a rule for uncertainty. The clearer you manage the task, the less the agent has to guess. There are many important topics we are not covering today. Git, GitHub, branches, work trees, MCP, hooks, skills, subagents, automations, corporate security. All of this is real and useful, but it is level 2. If you start there, you can easily overload yourself. The right order is, first understand what an agent is, then learn to give it a folder and instructions, then learn to check the result, and only after that build more complex workflows. You do not need to become an expert in one evening. First, build the habit of delegation, then make the tools more advanced. Here is a simple path to start. Step 1. Choose a small real task. Not automate my whole business, not learn agents. Something concrete. Analyze 10 reviews, outline a post, structure notes, prepare a short report, improve an email, organize a folder, or find mistakes in a small piece of code. Step 2. Create a working folder. Step 3. Put context into it. Notes, old text, spreadsheets, PDFs, examples, requirements, constraints. Step 4. Write simple rules. Step 5. Ask for a plan first, not execution immediately. For example, read the files and propose a plan. Do not change anything until I confirm. Step 6. Let it do one small step and check the result. Step 7. If it worked well, save the process as a template or a skill. That is the adult step. You turn one lucky result into a repeatable workflow. At that point, the agent stops being a toy and becomes a working instrument. Let's put everything into one final idea. If you remember only one sentence from this webinar, remember this. An agent is a model in a working environment, not magic, not just a chat, not a make everything perfect button. A system where the model receives context, instructions, tools, permissions, an action loop, and a definition of done. Your job as a user is not just to write prompts. Your job is to create an environment where the agent can work well. The people who learned this earlier will have a serious advantage in code, documents, analytics, content, project management, learning, business, and personal projects. The future does not belong to people who know the names of more tools. It belongs to people who can delegate work to agents clearly and manage the result. If this idea feels relevant to you, the next step is not just to listen to more theory. The next step is to practice regularly with people who are also learning this new layer of work. Today, I gave you the foundation. But the natural question is, how do you keep going? At some point, I thought about recording a classic course, but for AI, and especially for agents, a static course is not the best format. By the time you record the course, part of the tools has already changed. New models appear, new features appear, new limitations appear, new approaches appear. So instead of recording a fixed course, I decided to build a closed community. The idea is simple. We do not study the topic once and disappear. We keep our hand on the pulse. We look at current tools. We test them on real tasks. And step by step, we learn how to use AI and agents in life, work, projects, content, and learning. Every week inside the community, I will run a new session. Sometimes it will be a webinar like today. I explain the topic, give the mental model, and show how to think about it. Sometimes it will be a masterclass. I show the exact steps, how to set up a project, how to give an agent a folder, how to write instructions, how to check the result, and how not to break the process. Sometimes it will be a workshop. We look at your tasks, your screen, your project, your case, and together we figure out how to apply agents to it. There will also be a chat. At first I will answer questions myself. Which tools to use, how to phrase the task, how to structure the project, what to do in your specific case. Later my own agent will help with this as well. I am already building it for exactly this purpose. And that is logical. A community about AI agents should gradually become more agentic itself. The topics will not be detached from reality. I will look at what is actually happening in AI right now and also at the real requests from the members. So the group itself will influence what we study next. Which tools, which tasks, which workflows, which practical problems. In short, this is not a course that becomes outdated. It is a live practice environment and a community of people who do not want to watch AI from the sidelines. The membership is $50 per month. If you want to join, scan the QR code. Right now, it may lead to my personal messages. If you are watching the recording later, it may already lead to an agent that replies instead of me. Right there, and I or the agent will give you access to the chat. If the QR code is hard to see, I will also duplicate the link in the video description and in my Telegram channel. If you have questions now, write them in the chat. I will answer for a few more minutes and then we will finish. Thank you for being here. Free webinars will also happen from time to time, so subscribe to the Telegram channel and the YouTube channel to get the announcements. It was good to see you here. Thank you for coming.